You get some great graphs. So you can, see, you can generate dashboards to see what's the breakdown of the application, how many people, how the service is working.
G'day team, Adam Cogan here from SSW and today I have a special guest, Matt Wicks. How are you, Matt?
Yeah, I'm going well. How are you, Adam?
Excellent. We are talking all about error handling. Do you love errors?
Not really. I don't like experiencing errors. I like fixing them.
Okay, great. Well, we have a lot of processes around what we do with errors, and we talk about errors a lot. And I thought you would be a good man to talk about this. So, what is, a quintessential thing that you care about with errors and error handling in the code?
I want to make sure that they're not, lost to the ether. So I want to make sure that there's something even as simple as adding application insights into the application, so that 80% of the work is done without touching anything. So if an error happens, it's at least recorded somewhere.
Right. Okay. Well, that leads in very nicely with the very first rule, and that is, do you use the best exception handling library? And this is essentially, do not roll your own. Do not, record errors in a database of your own making. Use a service, and our most common ones we use is Application Insights from Microsoft, Seek, and Raygun from a Kiwi company.
Yeah, I don't know if it's not across the Tasman.
Yes. Now tell me, what's your opinion on these exception handling libraries?
They're all excellent. So use them all in anger. Building something on Azure Application Insights is kind of a no-brainer, because if you add something like an app service, there's just a little bit of configuration in the infrastructure. You don't have to change your application, and bang, you're getting some great metrics into App Insights, which is really cool. You get some great graphs, so you can you can generate dashboards to see what's the breakdown of the application, how many people, how the service is working. If you've got dependencies that you're dependent on, you can see how quickly are they responding. What's the error rate for a particular dependency. Maybe you're making a call out to an API that's flaky, and it makes you look bad because you're inheriting their errors. At least you can see this information really well. That's not to say that the other services aren't good. They're great as well.
In some of our projects, we actually use all three, don't we? Is that for fun, that we love seeing more and more errors?
We don't want to see the errors. We want to fix them. So the more information we can gather. So for example, Raygun is super cool. If you've got a JavaScript single page application, they're really good at finding those errors and tracking it back to code just by uploading the source maps to their service. So that's really good from the front end perspective. Maybe you've got, you want to coalesce logs from different applications using Seek. Maybe you have multiple services that you need to see the bigger picture across them. And Application Insights isn't providing it, but for a single application, App Insights is doing what you want. So hey, I don't see the problem. You've got all these awesome choices, and you can use them all just with a little bit of configuration.
Now, are we talking to just .NET devs here, or is this appropriate for Angular devs, React devs, even Blazor devs?
Yeah, definitely all of the above. So it doesn't matter what type of application you're writing. All these tools are, great to help you capture this information, not lose it, and be able to troll through it.
Okay. For a tip for the product owners out there, the view that you just saw before with the insights, that is a great one that we like to show the product owner in every single one of our sprint reviews, so that you're visualizing the health of the app and you're attacking. Yes, there's the sprint review email. Yes. So we're attacking, the unhealthiest part of the app and putting that as a PBI in the next sprint. So you're always improving.
Yeah, you can actually configure Application Insights to do that automatically for you.
Awesome. Let's move on to rule number 2. I want to get your views on this one. Presenting a nice error screen. What are your thoughts on this? And how long since you've seen that yellow screen of death?
It hasn't been long enough. So the yellow screen of death is I saw it recently when I was getting an ESTA for going to America. This is a couple of years back, obviously, and I saw that, and that took me back to the beginning of my career. So that's been around a while. I absolutely hate seeing it because it's just not showing a level of craft in development. So another thing I hate seeing is just a generic error page where they've thrown an exception, but there's no page for it. I actually like seeing pretty error pages, as funny as that sounds, because the developers have kind of realized that, hey, this is an enterprise application. We want it to look good. We want to tell users, hey, this error happened, but at least we know and care about you, so we'll be fixing it shortly.
So you're actually saying it's a good idea to put lipstick on a pig in this case?
Well, no, you're not hiding the fact that there's an error has happened. It's not like an iPhone app that disappears when there's an error and you have to relaunch it. You're owning that problem.
Right. And giving them a little bit of information. One of the things I like to explain to devs, the goal is that a client doesn't call us up and say, hey, Matt, there was an error. Can we talk about this error that happened? And you go, oh, yeah, tell me about it. Let's fix this. You want to say to them, yes, I know there was an error. It actually got logged in our system. We've already seen it and we're already looking at it. That's kind of what you're after.
Definitely. For one of my clients, I was actually telling him that errors were happening before his clients had told him about it, because people have kind of been conditioned to say, oh, there's a problem, it'll get fixed soon. But if you're not capturing this information, how does anyone know to fix it?
So Matt, what is the code that you like to see in the application, say a .NET Core application?
Funnily enough, I like to see the default code that comes out of the box, because it configures some middleware behavior that says, hey, if you're in development, we'll show this developer exception page. They've made it white, not yellow, so it looks a little bit nicer on the eyes. Otherwise, show your pretty error page that you've spent time crafting that makes your application look good to your users.
Okay, and what does this look like in .NET 5 or .NET 6?
So yeah, in .NET 5, it kind of looks exactly like that. There's not much changed. In .NET 6, you've got the option for minimal APIs. So if I go over to GitHub, Damien Edwards has an example here where if you scroll down, hey, if environment.development is false, we want to show this nice error page. So they're taking it and making it a little bit easier for you because you've got less code to write.
Okay, awesome. Let's jump into rule number 3 so I can get your opinion on that. Do you use the best trace logging library? And I guess I think of this as, it is really expensive to fix bugs. If a client hits a bug and you don't know instantly what it is, the developer often goes back and adds trace logs and then redeploys it and then hopes the error happens again. What happens in the perfect scenario?
So in the perfect scenario, you've got logging statements in your code already, so that if the exception happens, you've got more information, more context to understand where the issue happened and why it happened. You don't have to make any changes to code. You may just change a setting to dial up or down what level of logging is being done.
So in our repository, say Application Insights, you've got errors going in there and you've got trace logs of usage telemetry in there too.
It's all usage telemetry.
Right.
It's either how the application is being used, if that resulted in, a success behavior or a faulty behavior. It should all be tracked and available for you to search through. So you can find out, hey, which code paths are having issues, and why they're having the issues. So hopefully you've got some good logging practices there. I think in terms of what's the best, well, the best is actually to depend on an abstraction. So .NET ships with some logging abstractions, and then your application isn't taking a dependency on something like Log4net straight away. You're depending on an abstraction, and then you're hooking Log4net into the backend to say, hey, I'm gonna, whatever logs you produce, I'll put into where you configure. But your code is very familiar. You're writing the same logging statements if you're creating an API or if you're creating a Blazor application. So when you're logging information, it's really easy to see, hey, I've got a logger that's being dependency injected. I'm going to log some information. There's a message template, and I'm doing some structured logging because I'm even passing an object. State time not now is a complex object, but I can log that. I'm not restricted to just text. JK has got a great video on this where he goes into how do you use these logging tools the right way so that you can save yourselves hours of debugging time after the error has happened, and you're trying to reproduce or trying to understand what caused a particular error.
Okay, cool. Why does JK just love talking about debugging?
He loves solving problems.
And everyone else's problems.
Yeah.
Yes, he loves helping people debug. It's fun. All right, let's move on to rule number 4. Now, this is about catching and rethrowing exceptions. A real-world example is this, like me receiving a notification from Amazon saying that my delivery for my wife that she's expecting has not arrived, incorrect mail shipping address or something, and I call her up and say, error, and she doesn't know what the hell I'm talking about. Or I say, there's a problem, and she has no idea what I'm talking about.
Or worst case, you don't say anything at all. So that's called, swallowing exceptions. So if you have a try catch block and you don't do anything in there, sort of like these two, that's really bad. If there is an Amazon delivery that, you're not telling anyone that there's a delivery error, then that's not good for anyone. If you're not doing anything with it and you're just passing on the information, is that adding any value? If you're going to be catching an exception, do something with it at the bare minimum. So don't catch anything you can't handle. So that may be, hey, there was a delivery exception. I'm going to send a text message to let someone know. Cool. Then you can rethrow the error because this is code. Ideally, if you're following something like Jason's clean architecture template, you may have your application that's doing queries to a database. It doesn't need to know that it's using SQL. So maybe you've got some infrastructure layer that catches the SQL exception, looks for the magic numbers on these things because SQL's been around for forever, and that's the way that these exceptions were handled previously. And then it can rethrow a nice exception. So in this case, it's throwing a ID already taken exception, much easier to understand than 2601, which I have to look up and try and work out what's going on. So this is the gold standard.
Okay, let's move on to rule number 5. Do you catch exceptions precisely? This is about not just catching everything as a generic exception, right?
Yeah, so all exceptions in .NET inherit from System.Exception. But if you go to catch System.Exception, can you actually do something with it? Are you going to add some value? So just like in the previous rule, you don't want to catch exceptions and not doing anything with it. But when you do catch exceptions, you may want, in some cases, to do option A, and in other cases, do option B. So you can have multiple catch statements so that allow your exceptions to fall into the right buckets in terms of what do they need to do. The only way to do that is to catch specific exceptions.
I can tell you during, we both do a lot of coding tests with new candidates. I don't really care about their error handling in, a simple example, but I do find it funny that they cannot understand, that you should be capturing a specific exception. It's almost like a lot of .NET devs don't know this thing.
Yeah, that comes up quite a bit. That being said, if you are writing a service, you do want some middleware that catches this type of exception, then provides that nice page. So it is a bit funny that in some instances this is valid, but then that's handled inside middleware. Inside your code, you want to do things specifically, and you want to catch things that you can actually do things with.
So let's move on to rule number 6. Do you know that you should never throw an exception using System.Exception? All right, what's your thoughts on this one?
This is exactly the same as the previous one. So you should never catch System.Exception. The only way to do that is not to throw System.Exception. Because again, it's super generic. You don't know what it is. If we had like a bit of code like this where, hey, I'm looking for a particular to-do list. If it was null, I could throw a new exception. Odds are it wouldn't include a message like this. But even then, if I caught that exception, I then have to look at a message and compare strings to try and work out what was going wrong. As a person, that's really easy. In code, it's going to fail for sure. A better way to do it is that when you don't find it, you may throw a custom exception, like not found exception. Just from the name, I know something wasn't found. So I can handle that and work with it. So if I was writing a web API, I'll return a 404. If I'm creating this custom exception, I could even format the message. So it's always the same every time and consistent. So if that's being included in some problem details that comes back from my API, that, hey, maybe that's okay. And it's a 404 with a little bit of nice information.
And that takes us on to the last rule, which is, do you use an analytics framework to help manage exceptions? Don't we have bigger problems if we are logging so many errors and so much stuff that we need to analyze this in some framework?
Yeah, possibly there may be a lot of errors, and yes, that is a big issue. But using an analytics framework means we can aggregate the information to see how frequently things are happening. And maybe we can find, trends or patterns in it. So we could see, hey, this problem's happening a lot. We know that fixing this bug is more important than fixing this bug because of how frequently it happens, the number of users that are being affected. All of a sudden, we can prioritize our backlog based off, actual user metrics, as opposed to, oh, we think this bug is bad, and we think this bug is bad. Which one do we solve first? Well, if we had user telemetry, we know that, hey, our users are experiencing this one more than that one. So odds are it's a better solution. But this doesn't apply to just exceptions. This could be to do with the code that's running in production. So by using these analytics frameworks, we may be able to look at the trace logs to see, hey, this code doesn't actually get fired anymore. We're maintaining it, but we don't have to. So we can remove it, or we're trying to work out what changes do we make to a system to get the most value out of our time. If we're going to refactor some code or make some performance improvements, we can see, oh, this method gets called 1,000 times, this one gets called 5 times. How much money will we save because we've got multiplier effect on those refactorings?
Of all the frameworks out there, which ones do you like?
Well, there's a big list here. I tend to go with application insights for the Azure projects, because you don't have to do a lot to get it up and running, which means you're getting better value out of your dev time.
Okay, all right. Well, that's fantastic. Thanks, Matt. Do you have any final thoughts for devs and the way they handle their exceptions?
Yeah, log whatever you can, because you don't get a chance to go back and change it in your daily scrums. Go through the metrics. We've got this 8 steps to scrub. We do have a section here about gathering metrics, errors, performance usage, and user feedback, and that feeds back into your product backlog. You can automate that with App Insights, which is really cool. And some of the other products, you've got some webhooks that you can do some automations with as well.
All right. Well, that was fantastic. Just before we go, can you show everyone your coffee cup? I think this will only be funny to Aussies. But yes, your Melbourne coffee, and he is from Melbourne, so he's allowed to make fun of Melbourne.
I grew up in Melbourne, yeah.
And he is from Melbourne, and he is allowed to make fun of Melbournians. How do you say that? And hopefully you'll take some of that advice from Matt. And if you have any comments, throw those down. Tell us the most annoying code that you see that shouldn't be in .NET Enterprise applications. Thank you, Matt, for that time that you gave us. And this is Adam Cogan signing off for SSW TV.